Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Hope you're having a great week, and I'm just excited to continue talking about who God is through the different names of God here today. Last week we introduced the idea of a combination name of God, where God's name Jehovah is combined with another word to bring out a specific aspect of his character. Last week we saw that God is Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides, and this week we're going to look at God as Jehovah Shalom. And so to do that, we need to go to the book of Judges, which is one of the darkest times in Israel's history. Israel had turned from God. They had run away from him. They were being disobedient. And so God was bringing different people groups to oppress Israel and to try and get their attention to turn their hearts back to him. And in Judges chapter 6, we see this happening with the people of Midian. The Israelites would work hard all year, and they would grow their crops and food for their families. And right at harvest time, the people of Midian would come along. They would bring the people, they would bring their animals, and they would just utterly devastate the land by consuming and taking all the crops. The Bible says it was like there was a swarm of locusts that came and just destroyed the land. That's the picture it gives. And the people were so afraid of the Midianites that they would go and they would hide in caves in the mountains to get away from them. In verse 6 tells us that the people of Israel were brought low because of the people of Midian. It was a difficult and just terrible time. And it's in the midst of this that we meet a man called Gideon. And just like the other Israelites, he was afraid. And so he had gathered some crops and he was hiding in the wine press, getting it ready, because he was afraid of the Midianites as well. And during this time, God comes and meets Gideon, and Gideon doesn't know that he's speaking to God, but God says that he is going to call him up to be a deliverer of the people, that God is going to use Gideon to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Midianites. And so there's this back and forth where Gideon doesn't understand how he could make a difference, what he could do. But eventually God says that he would be with Gideon, and he reveals to Gideon that he was talking to God himself. And when he does this, Gideon's fear is expounded. He becomes afraid. He thinks he's going to die because he has seen God face to face. But then God says this. He says, "Peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die." And immediately when Gideon understands this, he goes and he builds an altar. And he says that God is Jehovah Shalom. He is the God of peace. He is the Lord who brings peace. Now I want you to think about this. Why would he say that? His circumstances has not changed one bit. He was in the same situation. Things were just as difficult, yet he said God had brought him peace. If anything, circumstantially, things were about to get more difficult because God had called him to redeem Israel. God had called him to deliver Israel from the Midianites. So things were going to get harder, yet he makes this declaration that God is peace. Why is that? Because our peace should not be based on our circumstances. Our peace should not be based on our situation or what's going on around us. Our peace comes from having a relationship with God and the confidence that he is going to be with us. See, Isaiah talked about this very thing when he was speaking of the coming Messiah, and he said that he would be the Prince of Peace, that he would bring peace into the lives of people, speaking of Jesus. Paul's life reflects this. If you look at Philippians chapter 4, Paul is in prison. He's facing difficulty. He's in tough circumstances, yet he tells others not to be anxious, not to worry, because the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep their hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. What is he saying? That peace does not come from what's going on around us. Peace comes from within. Peace comes from having the confidence that we have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. So this week, what I want you to do is read through Judges chapter 6. Try and understand how Gideon could have peace even in the midst of difficult circumstances. And think about your own life. What in your life has you in turmoil? What in your life has you in difficulty? What in your life has you worried, has you fearful? Maybe jot those things down on a piece of paper and then just pray and ask God to take those things. Pray and ask God to show you that if you have that relationship with him, that he can bring peace into your life, because he is Jehovah Shalom, the God of peace. So I hope that's an encouragement to you again this week, that we can live with peace within our hearts, peace in our lives, when we have a relationship with Jesus, when we have a relationship with Jehovah Shalom. Talk to you guys next week.